Hey guys, Solid here and welcome back to another episode of Adventure News, and today we're talking Triumph, that is the Adventure Sport 660 Tiger, and why it isn't the adventure bike you think it is. So before you tear your hair out like I have out of confusion as to why this isn't off-road ready, I wanted to make this video to clear everything up. So there's a lot of confusion swirling around this Adventure Sport Tiger 660, and I wanted to clear that up for a lot of people as I've been receiving quite a few comments on an old video I did when I was talking about these bikes coming to market at the end of last year. So I wanted to clear this up for you. The number one most important thing I need to get across to you is the adventure bike is still coming. This is their Sport Tourer. Now, for those of you thinking this is their adventure bike, you're wrong. They just happen to have put adventure on the title here to capitalize on the hot market of adventure bikes. They've just tagged it on. Triumph have a long history of calling their Sport Tourers Tigers. Think of the 1050 and the bikes that have been around for well over a decade that they call Tigers that are Sport Tourers. That is great commuters. You can chuck hard luggage or soft luggage on them and do long distance touring on them. They've got a great cult following and they've been around for donkey's years. The adventure bike is almost certain to still be coming. That is the one that will be off-road ready, that represents the 900 Tigers that you know so well. So why have they gone with the Adventure Sport Tourer first? Well, it's easier and cheaper and requires far less engineering and R&D. They're following the playbook from Yamaha and Honda. Think about what they did with the CB500 series or Yamaha's 700cc series. They started with a naked, they then went to a Sport Tourer, then you saw finally the Tenere 700 and the CB500X. They're at the end of the line. Why is that? Well, they require the most R&D. Taking a naked bike and turning it into a Sport Tourer is pretty easy. You put on a fairing, you change the economics, you might make a few more tweaks here and there, but basically it's far less intensive to engineer a Sport Tourer out of a naked than it is to make an off-road bike. This was always the plan from Triumph. I'll throw up pictures from an internal conference at Triumph where they're talking about all three bikes that they were planning to make out of the Trident 660. So you can clearly see the Adventure Sport was one of the bikes they were going to make. And you can clearly see that there is a proper off-road ready adventure bike from Triumph in the works. Now, the other reason they're doing it this way is this buys them more time and it also adds a second revenue stream to the investment in this modular platform. So it makes sense to get a second bike to market as quick as possible. The Sport Tourer is the quickest avenue to that. So this is why you're seeing the Adventure Sport first. The other reason is engine tuning. The Adventure Sport requires no tuning really. They can just take what is already ready in the Trident. They don't need to make it more off-road ready. That is, shave off some horsepower and add some torque to the bottom end to make it far more tractable off-road. So they don't have to do that with this Sport Tourer. So that's another reason that you see the Sport first rather than the adventure bike. So what we know so far is that this is a 660 triple. It currently makes around 80 horsepower and 47 foot-pound of torque. It's quite revvy. I think you'll expect to find that exact same setup in this Sport Tourer. I do think that will change for the adventure bike. It looks like you get hard luggage as an option or standard, which is great to see. I do really appreciate Sport Tourers that come with hard luggage. The fact that it's got 17-inch wheels, it will be pretty great for the twisties and for commuting. It means maximum grip and handling. But to me, I would have liked to have seen a 19-inch front wheel, but perhaps they're saving that for making two versions of the adventure bike like BMW do with their GS series. Given that I'm an off-road channel, I like to see off-road ready components, but it's fine on this Sport Tourer. I think the 17-inch front wheel will do it quite a lot of justice. We can clearly see that it's got a decent fairing with a pretty tall windshield, so that also looks like it will service those who do long distances in the saddle. And you can clearly see the ergonomics are a little different there. It looks like the handlebars are a lot taller. You sit more upright than you do on the Trident. Other than that, there's no specifications released from Triumph. This is just a testicle tickler. Nothing really specific. It's just here to get everyone talking like I am. So well done, Triumph. You've reached your goal. So the big question is, what the hell do we expect out of the adventure bike that we haven't heard anything about? Well, we know it's going to be a triple, 660, and we know it's probably going to be a little bit over 200 kilos. How do we know that? Well, based off the Trident. I don't think there's any possibility that it will be lighter. I think it will be a very good possibility that it'll be slightly heavier, purely because we expect a bigger petrol tank, all the extra components that will have to be bolted on for the adventure bike, and the fact that they won't really be trying to put the lightest high-end components on this bike. Remember, in a lot of countries, they make a learner legal version of this bike. To be learner friendly, you have to have a small price tag, which means cutting costs. So I don't think this is going to have high-end components. Scratch that out of your mind that this is going to come with Öhlins and it's going to weigh only 150 kilos. I think this is going to be a middle of the road, perfectly acceptable adventure bike. Why I'm excited about this is just like the Tenere 700, is it's kind of turning back the clock. I think the golden era for the middleweight bike was when the F800 GS came out and all the bikes that came out along that time. They had decent power, they were still only a smidge over 200 kilos, which is perfectly manageable for an adventure bike. And since then, we've just seen them turn basically into the big adventure bikes. But I think it obviously needs a few key things. Decent travel, good clearance, good amount of capacity in the petrol tank, some thought put into the design for durability. People drop their adventure bikes. I'm a professional at it. This whole channel started with how bad I ride off-road. So making a bike that can take a hit is very important. Those are the key features I really want to see. I'm not too caught up in the power figures, although I do hope they do retune it, because in its current guise, it's very high revving. I think that isn't very conducive to off-road riding. I would like to see them bring in more torque, make it more tractor factor for the low RPM situations off-road. Other than that, I'm really just happy for Triumph to have a crack at this and see what happens. But I'd love to know what you think. Are you still holding on to your hopes and dreams that this will be the ultimate lightweight adventure bike? Or are you fairly realistic and just hoping for a fairly decent middleweight adventure bike that the middleweights really haven't offered in quite some time? Let me know down below what you want to see out of this, and also let me know your thoughts on this adventure sport. That's all from me. Have a good weekend. Don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next video. Catch you later, guys.